Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're taking what usually looks like a dry, incredibly intimidating list of Indian corporate statutes and transforming it into a clear, easy-to-navigate mental map. If you've ever stared at these rulebooks and felt completely lost in a sea of legal jargon, get ready for that amazing aha moment where it all finally clicks. We're going to decode this whole ecosystem together. If you're a law student, a junior lawyer, or even a seasoned business professional, you've definitely faced the elephant in the room, the overwhelming alphabet soup of acronyms. I'm talking MCA, SEBI, FEMA, NCLT. It honestly sounds like a totally different language, right? But I promise you, once you zoom out and get your bearings, it's just a highly logical system of rules, the referees who enforce them, and the rule books where they live. So here is our game plan for today. We're breaking this massive legal ecosystem down into 4 logical buckets: the core corporate statutes, the securities and specialized laws, the watchdogs and regulators, and finally, where to actually find the binding legal text. Let's just jump right into bucket number 1.
Bucket number 1 focuses on the core corporate statutes. Think of these as the absolute structural foundations and the daily commerce laws that literally every corporate lawyer, regardless of their specific niche, interacts with on a regular basis.
Imagine bringing a brand new business to life. The Companies Act of 2013, that's your DNA. It dictates exactly how you incorporate, how you run your board meetings, and eventually how you merge. Now, if you want a simpler partnership structure, you'd rely on the LLP Act of 2008 instead. And hey, once you're big enough to truly dominate your market, the Competition Act steps in to ensure you continue to play fair and don't abuse that dominance.
We also absolutely have to talk about one of the most critical structural statutes of the modern Indian economy, the IBC, or the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. This was a literal game changer. It aggressively shifted power away from defaulting business promoters and handed it directly to the creditors. Because of that, handling a company in financial distress is now one of the most fast-paced, high-stakes arenas in modern corporate practice.
But beyond that structural DNA, a company is a living, breathing entity doing business every single day. That means every commercial handshake is governed by the Indian Contract Act. Then you've got the inescapable realities of running a business, the Income Tax Act for your corporate taxes, the labor codes governing your workforce, and even the Right to Information Act. That last one is actually a surprisingly powerful tool for corporate lawyers who need to extract regulatory records regarding public sector units.
Moving right along to bucket number 2, securities and specialized laws. This is where we leave the general day-to-day operations behind and look at the highly specialized rules that dictate stock market behaviors, raising massive amounts of capital and moving money across international borders. Before we even touch the domestic stock market, we have to demystify FEMA. The Foreign Exchange Management Act is the absolute cornerstone gatekeeper for the Indian economy. Literally, if a single rupee of foreign money comes into India as foreign direct investment, or if Indian capital is being invested overseas, it has to clear FEMA. Not a single cross-border transaction happens without a lawyer navigating those hurdles first. When it comes to navigating the domestic capital markets, you've got to master this highly specific chunk of SEBI's rulebook. Think about the life cycle here. If a company wants to go public, you use the ICDR regulations. Once they're public, they must constantly disclose financial data under LODR. If a rival attempts a hostile takeover, you immediately deploy the SAST takeover code. And of course, to make sure nobody's cheating the system, you rely on the PIT, the Prohibition of Insider Trading Regulations. Now, here's a vital concept to wrap your head around. There's a massive difference between the Parent Act and the day-to-day rules. The Parent Act, like the SEBI Act itself, just establishes the broad framework and creates the regulator. But honestly, you're going to spend 99% of your actual practice relying on the detailed regulations and rules made under that act. That's where the real compliance requirements, the strict timelines, and the precise forms actually live. Okay, so we've got a clear view of the rules. But let's be real, laws are just words on paper without enforcement. With the rulebook established, we naturally have to ask, who acts as the referee here? Who's watching the market? And where do practitioners actually go to file all this paperwork? That brings us to bucket number 3, the watchdogs and regulators. These are the actual government bodies and institutions that enforce the statutes. Because knowing the law is only half the battle. Knowing exactly which website to visit and which authority to petition is how you actually get the job done. So let's look at where you actually file things. It's beautifully specific based on the task at hand. The Ministry of Corporate Affairs, MCA, is your daily portal for company e-filings via MCA 21. SEBI's website is an absolute goldmine for informal guidance and board orders. The RBI is exactly where you hunt down those FEMA master directions. And if two giant companies want to merge, you head straight to the CCI to figure out your notification forms and prove you aren't creating an illegal monopoly. But what happens when things go wrong? You don't go to the regulators for that. You go to the tribunals. The NCLT, the National Company Law Tribunal, is your main battlefield for corporate disputes, contested mergers, and those high-stakes IBC insolvencies we discussed earlier. And if you lose a fight there, you appeal right up to the NCLAT. On the flip side of the coin, the government has to actively protect its revenue and prosecute financial crimes. The Income Tax Department and the GST portals handle the massive daily flow of tax compliance. But you really want to pay special attention to the Enforcement Directorate, or the ED. They are a formidable agency aggressively prosecuting money laundering under the PMLA and severe foreign exchange violations under FEMA. To properly round out our referees, we can't forget these vital facilitators. The DPIIT releases the highly anticipated foreign direct investment policies. The stock exchanges, like the BSC and NSE, have their own super strict listing formats. And you absolutely cannot ignore the professional institutes, ICSI and ICAI, because the secretarial and accounting standards they issue are legally binding on corporate entities.
Right, so knowing the regulators and tribunals is fantastic for high-level strategy. But when you're sitting at your desk writing an advisory memo for a client's millions are on the line, where do you actually look to find the precise official text of the law? That brings us to our fourth and final section, finding the actual law. We're pivoting from theory to purely practical tools here. Because let's face it, relying on an outdated PDF from a random Google search is a complete recipe for professional disaster. For absolute certainty, you've got to rely on official, free repositories. The India Code website is the government's official database for central acts. It's your single best source for current BEAR Act. The e-Gazette is literally the official proof copy of any new amendment. And PRS Legislative Research, absolute lifesaver. They provide these brilliant, plain language summaries explaining exactly why the legislature decided to change a law in the first place. It's also crucial to know when to actually open your wallet for research tools. You pay for subscription-based platforms like SEC Online, Manupatra, or Lexis to get annotated acts and case law. But for the most current, hyper-specific day-to-day rules, paid databases often lag behind. For those, you always go straight to the free official regulator websites, like SEBI, RBI, or the MCA. Well, look at how far we've come. By categorizing the statutes into core and specialized areas, understanding that crucial hierarchy between parent acts and day-to-day rules, and knowing exactly which referee enforces them and where to find the text, you've completely conquered the alphabet soup. You now hold the definitive, structured map to this entire ecosystem. This entire fascinating ecosystem is now yours to navigate with total confidence. You've got the tools, you have the structure, and the intimidation factor is gone. So I encourage you to take this framework, pinpoint the regulatory sphere that truly sparks your curiosity, and just dive in. With this map in your hands, which specific area of the corporate legal ecosystem are you going to master first? Thank you so much for exploring with us, and keep learning.